So the PlayStation, it would be kind of weird to be in a world where there wouldn't be a PlayStation in today's world. Sony's PS1 that debuted all the way back in the early 90s is still probably one of their most iconic consoles to date, I would argue, alongside the PlayStation 2. It's one of my favorite consoles personally. But that wasn't always the case. The original idea for the PS1 was that Sony was working with Nintendo. The PlayStation was going to be a disc-based add-on for the Super Nintendo. It was even called, like, I believe it was called the Super Nintendo PlayStation, I think it was. This project got quite far along with Nintendo and Sony, where it was even shown off at trade shows. They even had prototype builds of the thing. You can still find it if you want to spend the money. You can find the Nintendo PlayStation out and about. Quite rare, but they did build it. They did show it off, but ultimately the project fell through with Nintendo and Sony because they couldn't quite come to an agreement. Probably to do with money, because it's always about money, isn't it, when it comes to business? But Sony split off and they went, you know what, we'll do it ourselves, that sort of thing. And they built the original PlayStation, which came out in 1995 here in Europe and the UK. And I believe it came out in Japan in 1994, late 94. And I don't think Nintendo were quite ready for the sort of competition that Sony were about to bring to the table, because the original PlayStation was insanely successful. For one, it was the first successful console to utilize CDs. Not to say that it's not like the first console to utilize CDs, but the PlayStation was the first console to successfully utilize the optical format of CDs in a good way for games, because you had like the Philips CDI, I believe the Atari Jaguar had a CD add-on, of course Sega's ill-fated Mega CD, as we call it here in the UK, not just the Sega CD. They didn't quite know what to do with the compact disc format, whereas Sony, being predominantly into televisions and audio equipment, knew exactly what to do with CDs, and so a lot of developers flocked to Sony's debut console to make their games for. So much so that a lot of relationships with Nintendo, with Capcom, Squaresoft at the time, they split off from Nintendo and they decided to go with Sony with the next installment of the Final Fantasy series being exclusive on the PlayStation for quite a long time. Resident Evil 2 was kind of exclusive, but not really, because it got an N64 port later. That might be another video for another time. But yeah, I think Nintendo really felt the consequences of like not sticking with the relationship with Sony, of doing the Nintendo PlayStation, and saying that out loud still sounds very silly to me. But yeah, the PS1 was insanely successful, released in '95 here in the UK and Europe. I think it was still supported well into the early 2000s, the console was. And to this day, I think it's one of the earliest memories I had as a gamer, as a kid, because I played the Super Nintendo, but I was a bit too young for the Super Nintendo. I was born in 1993, by the way. But in 1998, when I started playing the PlayStation, I think I started to form a memory more of like what games I was playing and what was going on in general, because I was about 5 years old when I started playing games properly. And the PlayStation, to this day, has this great library of games, of innovative, the weird, the wonderful in terms of games. If you had an idea for a game, or if you can think of a game in terms of like any randomness, it's probably on the PS1 somewhere. But I want to talk about some of the games I've got, sort of my memories of PS1, that sort of thing, in this video. And I've already done the brief history, so I won't go over that. And yeah, just the PlayStation 1 is just such a great console. I don't think I can be, well, I'm sure you've heard it all before here on YouTube about how iconic, how amazing the PS1 is, from many YouTubers who are probably from people who are older than me. I'm only 33, and I was a very young child when the PS1 came out originally. I mean, I was 2 years old when the PS1 came out, but when I started playing it, I was about 5. But yeah, let's talk about the PS1, some games for a bit. I've got a few physical ones. If I don't have the most iconic ones, I'm sorry. I just don't have them. A, they're too expensive, or B, perhaps I just don't like them. So I've got some physical ones here in cases. I don't know why I said physical, duh. And I've got some loose discs too, which have been, some of the cases have just been lost to damage and time, that sort of thing. Not in any particular order like these games. I'll go over it now, shall we? Let's get into the games I've got and I'll talk a bit about them, that sort of thing, shall we? So I've got if I can lift it without it all falling over, a quite concise collection of PS1 games. I'm looking at the screen of my camera so I don't drop all of this. Quite a concise PS1 collection. Try not to make the pile fall over, because honestly, when I started collecting for PS1, I got a PS2 in 2014, and at that point, I realised my PS3 could play PS1 discs. I didn't have knowledge of this at the time, so I started collecting them a bit more. Some of these from charity shops, some of them I just bought in my old retro shop. This was before they were expensive, by the way, these games. Whereas now I feel like PS1 is relatively expensive to collect for. It always used to be quite cheap in the 2000s and even in the early 2010s, but I guess a lot of people have grown more of an appreciation with the platform. But let's start off with one it's not bad, but it's not particularly good. It's not the best version of this game to play. The world is not enough on the PS1. Quite like this film, actually. It's probably one of the best Pierce Brosnan films, obviously next to GoldenEye. A lot of people just forget stuff after GoldenEye because everyone gets... His reputation was a bit tarnished with Die Another Day, and for good reason, because Die Another Day is a crap film. But first-person shooter, not the best version of the game. If you want to play this game, I highly recommend you play the N64 version. Not bad. It's a bit clunky, like with most FPS games on PS1, because console shooters, they weren't quite there yet. GoldenEye kind of got it right, but it wasn't until like the 2000s until we really got that sort of standard control scheme for FPS games. Not too bad. They emphasize a lot more on the espionage side of it, so you're like sneaking about, you taser people. There's even a bit where you're playing blackjack at a casino, so you do feel like Bond in the game. Up next is Worms Armageddon. I am a massive fan of the Worms series. I believe I found this in Bristol about 5 years ago. Oh, dropped it almost. For 99p in a charity shop. This game's really good. It got a remaster for I think it's the 25th anniversary. Last year or the year before. I've got it on Switch as well because Team 17 sent me the game over. Yeah, it's a really good game. Not my favorite Worms on the PS1. That goes to Worms World Party because it has more customization, but it's just a solid foundation that got the humor and the over-the-top cartoonish violence right in this one. It's just fantastic. Childhood favorite of mine here, and if you know me, you'll probably know Spyro the Dragon. I got this copy recently from CEX. I managed to get a really good copy, if you can see there, really good nick, that sort of thing. This was the game I was talking about when I said I started playing PlayStation in '98 as a 5-year-old, and this was the first game I finished on my own without any assistance, that sort of thing. Absolutely fantastic game. I played it a fair bit just for this video, where I'm so used to playing it on the Reignited trilogy in recent years. It took me a while to get back to the basics, as it were, because you have to control the camera, the shoulder buttons, that sort of thing. Here's one I found in a charity shop in Cromer here in Norfolk a few years ago before I moved here. Siphon Filter 2. I found this for £2. Siphon Filter is a fantastic series. It's kind of like Sony's answer to Metal Gear Solid. Kind of their answer to Metal Gear Solid. It's more sort of run and gun, a lot of it. But really good series of games. They released quite a few of these on PS1 and on PS2/PSP. I wish Sony would go back to this franchise because they need that sort of like military sort of stealth action genre game. Just a really solid series. Absolute classic here. Resident Evil 2. I bought this years ago from my old retro shop back in 2014, 2015. I think it was about a £5 I bought this for. This isn't a £5 anymore, by the way. Yeah, I think it still holds up quite well. Again, it took me a while to get used to the controls. Resident Evil 2, the old one, because of the tank controls, that sort of thing. But I think out of the old PS1 games, the original was aged like milk, but this one has aged like a fine wine. The atmosphere's still on point. The gameplay's still good. They dialed it up a bit with the action, but overall it's still a survival horror game. Visually it looks okay still. I think I like the more variation on the different zombies, but I think every person who has a PS1 collection should have at least one Resident Evil game in their collection. Here's one that I've never finished because it's ball-bustingly hard, but nonetheless I love it anyway. I've been playing through the Switch version of this. Is Rayman, the original Rayman, notoriously hard platformer on the original PlayStation. really good, beautiful animation, still holds up exceedingly well. Just absolutely beautiful. One of my favorite games on the platform. And as I said, they remastered it on the Nintendo Switch recently for the 30th anniversary. And well, on Switch and other platforms. I've been playing it on Switch specifically. But yeah, it's just really, really good. And I think Ubisoft are starting to grow an appreciation for the Rayman franchise, because at the time of recording this, they announced a remake for the Rayman Legends called Retold, which is cool. So Ubisoft are probably going to give us some new Rayman games, hopefully. The PS1 was quite notorious for light gun shooters. I do not have a G-Con 45 anymore. I haven't done in years. I don't even know why I own this game, to be honest, because it's not the best way to play with a controller. But I do love this game, and I used to have it on the DS, and that's Point Blank by Namco. And if you know, Namco also did the Time Crisis series. Point Blank is great. It's just a set of like mini games, shooting gallery mini games with like fun cartoonish characters, that sort of thing. Loved it as a kid. I remember playing in the arcade too. I actually played in the arcade last year in NQ64 in Bristol, and it was great fun. I love these games. They're absolutely fantastic. They're quite pricey, 2 and 3, I believe, but you can get Point Blank on the DS, and I think on the DS it works quite well, surprisingly. I'm going to lump these two together because visually and gameplay, they're pretty much identical, and that's the Oddworld games, Abe's Exodus and Oddworld's Abe's Odyssey. Absolutely love these games. I love the Oddworld games. Visually, these games still look really, really good. They got great animations. The atmosphere is great. Funny thing is, I don't like the New and Tasty remake from a visual standpoint. Gameplay standpoint, it's great, but a visual standpoint, I think Abe's Odyssey, the original, still holds up. It has that sort of dirty, grimy look about it, which was intentional, where you're in the factories or when you're in the wilderness. The atmosphere, I just think in general, is better in the original than it is in the remake, and the art style in general, I think, is better in these games compared to their remake counterparts, which Soulstorm is a remake of this, a loose remake of this. But yeah, really good games. They're not particularly expensive games either, these on PS1. They're just really good platformers, as we dub them these days, cinematic platformers. Oh, another classic here, Metal Gear Solid. I think you need Metal Gear Solid in your collection on PS1. Basically kind of kickstarted this stealth genre in general. Just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, still holds up today. I played through it in the Master Collection earlier this year on the PS5. Just absolutely brilliant. Voice acting still holds up, the story still holds up in terms of its relevance of today, of political infrastructure. It's just absolutely fantastic. And I just love Metal Gear Solid. I've got pretty much all of them somewhere in some form, and I'm excited for Metal Gear Solid 4 coming to PS5. Again, I'm going to lump these two together because similar in gameplay, and that's the Medal of Honor games. Again, a franchise I wish would come back. EA, what the hell are you doing with the Medal of Honor franchise? Medal of Honor Underground is a favorite of mine specifically because I played this one the most. This one's also very good. Took me a while to get used to these again because FPS games on PS1 a bit cumbersome in places, to say the least. But yeah, they're just absolutely fantastic. Great atmosphere, World War II setting, and with Underground, you're in the Resistance, so you use more sort of guerrilla tactics where you use petrol bombs. You go undercover as like photographers, so like that sort of thing. And the music by Michael Giacchino, absolutely fantastic, brilliant. If you know that name, he also did soundtracks like The Batman recently, that sort of thing. Again, I'm going to lump these two together because gameplay-wise, similar, and that's Grand Theft Auto and Grand Theft Auto London. GTA, controversial back in the day. You play it now and you just go, why? Why was it controversial? But yeah, I think it's the whole sort of morality of it where you're playing as an objectively bad person, which not often do you play as a objectively bad person in games, especially back then. But yeah, then they also released a expansion pack called London 1969, which is the only time that Grand Theft Auto has gone outside the United States. And this is just the first game, but with a 1960s London aesthetic, with that sort of like typical stuff from that era, like inspired by Austin Powers, that sort of thing, with many other jokes from the era. And yeah, they're great fun. I wish these would get like a remaster, these old ones. I'd like GTA 2 in my collection as well, by the way, but I don't have it. I think these would clear up really well in like HD, higher frame rates, that sort of thing on consoles. I'd love to play these on my Switch. They're just good arcade fun. It's like Micro Machines, but with murder. But oh, not my pile over. Up next is Gran Turismo 2. I do not, well, do I own the first one? I might have the first one in a loose disc. I bought this from a charity shop years ago. It's not an expensive game. Holds up exceptionally well. A brilliant racing game. Quite insane with how many cars are in there. It's a 2-discer as well. I believe back in the day the discs were scratch and sniff. One of them smelled like petrol and the other smelled like tire rubber, I think it was. I think that was a special edition. But yeah, they look so good still, these games on the PS1, and there was a lot of racing game in there. This one, another personal favourite of mine, Driver 2. I played this a lot back in the day. Looking back on it now, quite a flawed game. Very hard, this game. Not as hard as the first one, of course, with that ridiculous tutorial level. My god, that bloody tutorial level was ridiculous in the first game, where most people didn't even see outside of that garage at the cafe. No, there's no such tutorial in this one. They just let you get on with it. And it's relatively easy. The difficulty ramps up quite hard once you get to the other cities, especially when you get to Rio, I think it is. It gets ridiculously hard. But the only problem with this game is that the frame rate, it gets really bad. But I think it's quite an ambitious game. It really pushed the PS1 to its limits. Kind of makes me wonder why Reflections didn't just make it a PlayStation 2 game, cleared up a little bit. But I guess they were pushed to just make more driver games, that sort of thing. Especially once Atari took over publishing rights with Driver 3, and we all know how Driver 3 went when it came out. And the last in-box game I've got here is Crash Bandicoot 3, another personal favourite of mine. I found this at a boot sale for a £5 last year. I think it was last year, yeah. Yeah, great game, absolutely love it. Probably the easiest out of the three. 2 and 1 are very hard, but this one's probably the easiest out of the three. Still great platforming fun. And Crash Bandicoot's just absolutely fantastic, and I love it. And we haven't had a Crash Bandicoot game since 2020, I believe it is, with Crash Bandicoot 4. But that's my box collection. I've got a few loose discs to show you here, and let's look at the loose collection, shall we? Now on to the loose discs in the PS1 collection here. Why do I have loose discs? As I said before, these cases are quite fragile. These are from like new back in the day, things get lost to time, that sort of thing. But I'll go into these loose discs. To be honest, I always forget I've got these, to be honest, and you've already seen a flash of one of the games. And yeah, it's the problem with games back in the day. They were either in cardboard or they're in brittle plastic cases. But I've waxed lyrical enough about how fragile cases suck. So let's get into the first one. Resident Evil, the original. Yeah, the game that kickstarted all of it, to be honest. I love this disc here, where you just go, woohoo. But silly jokes aside, yeah, it's a classic for a reason, because it kickstarted the survival horror genre. I love it. I think it's quite good. I think it's dated a fair bit. If you're going to play the original, I do highly recommend you play the GameCube remake, and that's quite widely available these days in HD format. But I think you should play this for the sake of curiosity, for the sake of understanding the history of the franchise. The voice acting is atrocious, to say the least, but it wasn't particularly good in Resident Evil 2 either, but I feel they had a bit more of a grasp on the Japanese to English translation in the second one. This one, if you want a good laugh, just type into YouTube Resident Evil 1 cutscenes, voice acting. You'll get a good laugh for about 20 minutes because it's that bad. But it's still a great game nonetheless. Pure survival horror in a spooky mansion with monsters, zombies, that sort of thing. The tension in this game is quite good. The soundtrack in this game is fantastic too. The save room music's brilliant. Like with all Resident Evil games, the save room music's just fantastic. But yeah, Resident Evil, absolutely fantastic. Up next, what is this game? This bloody logo. It's Wipeout. Wipeout 2097, one of my favourite racing games on the PlayStation 1. For one reason is because of the music. The dance music that they feature in this game is fantastic, featuring Prodigy, that sort of thing. Brilliant racing game. Still looks good, holds up really well, but it's just absolutely fantastic. I wish Sony would do something with the Wipeout license. Bit of a pattern here. Sony just seem to dump a lot of their IPs that are quite unique and different. But yeah, Wipeout 2097, absolutely fantastic. Or if you're American, it's called Wipeout XL. But 2097, I think, is just a better title. Another classic here, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I love it. It's got all the music that I love in it, like the punk rock with Lagwagon, Goldfinger, that sort of thing. Just brilliant gameplay. The remaster they did back in 2020, also pretty good. Just part of my teenage years actually skateboarding. That sort of thing, like with the punk rock, the metal, the skateboarding, that sort of thing. I just love it. Absolutely fantastic. Again, another light gun shooter. Light gun shooters, as I said, were quite synonymous for this platform. Time Crisis, Project Titan. I think this was released exclusively on console. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this was only on console. This was never released in the arcades. We did have a G-Con 45 with this. When I say we, I mean my brother did back in the day. I don't know what happened to said G-Con 45. It came with that box. It was in the box with the game, like the big box collector's edition. If I have a picture somewhere, I'll flash it up on screen. But yeah, good installment. Not as good as the first one, but it's still good nonetheless. Yes, I do have Gran Turismo Loose, the original. Pretty battered actually. Ooh. But yeah, Gran Turismo, what more can I say? A Sony staple for any platform, to be honest. Each PlayStation has a Gran Turismo installment, and this is the one that started them all. Absolutely fan-dabby-dozy. Cool Borders 3, God, I haven't played this one in years. I remember playing it a lot as a kid. Extreme sports games, they were quite synonymous throughout the 90s and the 2000s. Cool Borders 3, I remember being quite good. I don't think it's that good these days, but I remember it being quite good with different courses. You could punch people while going down the slope. That was quite funny. But yeah, still a fun laugh. And finally, I have another light gun game, or light gun-esque, and that's Resident Evil Survivor. This game's quite expensive these days, but I do not have the case, so therefore it is not expensive. Not quite that well regarded, this game. I don't think it's that good. Some people are saying it's quite good these days. I don't think it's not a very good game. It just doesn't work, and the voice acting is worse than usual, and that's coming from a Resident Evil game of this ilk, from this era. It's just awful. And the gameplay, it's just irritating. It's annoying. You die very easily. You have infinite bullets with your pistol, but what's the point having infinite bullets and trying to sort of sell it as an action game when the enemies take too long to kill, and you can't outrun them? It's just irritating, and I don't know why this has kind of gained a cult following these days, because it's just not a very good game. I don't even know why I own it, to be honest. But yeah, that's it really. That's my collection. PS1, really good system, lots of really good unique games, lots of games that I just kind of lost the time because they're stuck on that platform. It felt like during that period that a lot of developers, if they had an idea, lots of publishers would be like, just do it, just do that sort of thing. Whereas now I feel like publishers would be too scared for like the weird ideas. I mean, you have games like Parappa the Rapper, Tombi is another one that's a favorite of mine. I don't own it because it's way too bloody expensive. I've got on Switch though, so that's fine. Just anything you could think of. I mean, what was the Cooler World, the puzzle game where you're a beach ball going around these weird sort of MC Escher like levels, and it's quite bizarre. Great game, by the way, but you just wouldn't get that these days. Not for the lack of imagination, but I think it's because of people are just not willing. Not the developers themselves, but the publishers are just not willing to take risks anymore with games. Whereas back then it was still a fairly new medium. I say new, it was like 20 odd years old at that point. But developers and publishers specifically were more willing to take risks on the weird and wonderful. Whereas now they play it safe with remasters, with third-person action games, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's it really. That's me waxing lyrical about the PlayStation 1, one of my favorite consoles of all time. What do you think? What is your favorite PS1 game? Let me know down below. And if you like what you've been watching, give me a like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, whatever, and I'll see you on the next one. See you later. Bye.